Guys, we're now more than a week into the beta for Skirk, and while Arcade obviously hasn't been finalized yet, we're starting to have more and more clarity about their mechanics and what works and what not. Today I will talk about what you should focus on for her in terms of builds, and I will also talk about her Constellation one. So if you're planning to get either the signature weapon or the Constellation one, but you don't have enough gems for both, you can know which of the two can be better. Do you want to get Escoffier or Navia, but you don't have enough gems to do so? I think I might have the right solution for you. This video has been sponsored by LD Shop, a website that allows you to buy Genesis crystals for much cheaper than it will cost in game, so you can hopefully get all the characters you want. Through LD Shop, you'll be able to get discounts that start from 15% off and can get considerably bigger depending on the specific deal. This is, of course, all done legally, and there is no risk of banning game really, something I can testify for myself because I bought from LD Shop before and also other similar means and never had any issues. The website offers a special coupon upon registration to get an additional discount and even a VIP system that gives you a Welkin Moon if you spend over $80. The whole process is also pretty easy and straightforward. You just have to fill out the forms that require your UID and server region, pay through the site, and you will receive the Genesis crystal in-game shortly after. This way, you will be able to get the amazing characters you want, but at a lower price than you would otherwise pay. You'll be able to reach LD Shop and get the discounts by clicking on the link in the description below. So, Skirk is really a quite straightforward character in terms of how she plays, because she's only there to deal damage for your team and without taking advantage of specific elemental reactions to increase her output. She also doesn't consume energy to use her elemental burst. Since she uses points she can generate herself instead, and all of this means that Skirk is one of the easiest characters to build and plan stuff for. Having said that, one peculiarity with her kit is that she can either be a main DPS or a burst DPS. I've already went in detail on it in the first video I made about her, but basically depending on how you decide to use her, she can either function as a nuker by solely using her elemental burst as an attack, or as a continuous DPS through her elemental skill stance. The builds for the two versions don't vary significantly, but there are some differences that are worth mentioning. Either way, let's start with a build talk. Artifacts wise, you want to go with attack for the sands, damage bonus for the goblet, and either crit rate or crit damage for the circlet depending on the rest of your build. The only doubt here will be between damage bonus and attack goblet. Depending on the build, the attack goblet can be somewhat close, partially because Skirk will have more access to damage bonus buffs than attack buffs on her team. The damage bonus option is generally better, but attack goblet can be worth considering if you have better substats on it. Moving on, a more debated topic is the artifact set. Skirk is a signature set that's already in the game, namely Finale of the Deep. This artifact set has very specific properties, because it can buff either normal or burst damage depending on which one you're dealing damage with, but never both for an extended window, because dealing damage with either of the two attacks will disable the other buff. Also, as a prerequisite, the character needs to have 0 energy, and Skirk has none by default, so this set really only works well with her. For the other thing I said, since Skirk is a character that can either deal burst damage or normal attack damage in a single sequence, but never both, this set works well with her. Anyhow, for the sets in general, there is kind of a difference depending on whether you use her as a burst DPS or a normal attack DPS, obviously, and so I'll divide the discussion in two sections, starting from the second. Expectedly, her signature set is the best option by default, but surprisingly other sets can surpass it depending on the scenario. Manage to say can actually be better if Urina's on the team and makes Skirk's HP drop continuously, and Blizzard Strayer is better if you're facing opponents that can be frozen, so most situations that don't include bosses. The Desert Chronicle set is also a pretty good option, as while its 2-piece effect won't benefit Skirk, its 4-piece effect is really good, because it increases both her normal and charge attack damage while increasing her attack speed as well. Charge attack damage increase is decent for Skirk, and the reason is that she can use charge attacks between her normal attack combos to absorb void wraiths around her and generate points that her kit can make use of. Her signature set actually doesn't buff charge attack damage with its 4-piece effect, while other full sets here will increase its damage, and that's part of the reason the set doesn't exactly exceed expectations. Meanwhile, the burst nuker scenario does benefit the set more, because in this case there are fewer good options. The Chronicle set obviously becomes quite irrelevant in this case, and the 2-piece effect from the mana Manashuse Hunter set, which gives normal and charge attack damage bonus only, is unutilized. So, in this case, her set is the most consistent and best option, only surpassed by Blizzard Strayer if enemies are frozen. And that's about it for artifacts. I would say that her signature set is still the best thing to farm probably, because I assume that even if using her as a main DPS, like as a continuous DPS on field using her normal attacks, there still will be scenarios where you can make use of her elemental burst nuke to deal a lot of damage in a single shot, and of course if you're not using Firina with her, Manashuse becomes unusable, so her signature set is the most consistent one. Before I move on, let me remind you that if you enjoy my channel but you haven't subbed yet, please consider doing so because it really makes me notice your support. Now, weapons wise, the first thing to mention is her signature weapon. As you could imagine, it's really good. It combines really high attack and crit values, which is all Skirk wants because she gets plenty of damage bonus from team sources anyway. It's also nice that while it gives crit rate, it only gives 22%, and so it makes it easier to build her with a crit rate circlet if you have a really good one or Manashuse Hunter set. Anyway, while it's significantly better than any other option, the others are still pretty great. Skirk is a sword character, and as such, she has access to a pretty stellar weapon selection. For the continuous main DPS playstyle, among 5 stars, Jade Cutter and Heron are high crit rate weapons that work really well, but they limit your build because they make it hard to use crit rate builds alongside them. Miss Splitter is a more balanced option, and Skirk pretty much synergizes perfectly with it because she will have 3 stacks of it always. The weapons requires you to deal elemental damage with normal attacks, cast the elemental burst, and have less than 100% energy. The first 2 are obviously easy enough, and for the third, Skirk has no energy, so she would have it active at all times. Among free-to-play options, 2 really strong ones are Finale of the Deep and Calamity of Issue. These 2 make for kind of a funny scenario, because Finale of the Deep requires you to use Skirk with a healer to clear the bond of life it puts on her, and Calamity of Issue requires you to use a shielder. So, while there will be situations where one of them won't work, if you have them both, you will pretty much cover all scenarios. For the burst DPS scenarios, the natural difference is that weapons like Heron or Calamity of Issue that focus on increasing your normal attack damage more fall off, while weapons like Wolffang that increase their elemental burst damage gain value. There are also other differences, like Miss Splitter losing some value because you won't deal normal attacks in this case, so you can only get 2 stacks with it. Now, having talked about the weapons, let me talk about the Constellation one, to compare it with a signature weapon in terms of investment value, and also to talk about some interesting build differences it creates. The Constellation one is particularly meaningful as it makes her deal damage for a multiplier of 500% of her attack every time she absorbs a Void Rift. Typically, Skirk should be able to absorb at least 6 Void Rifts for her continuous DPS playstyle and 3 for her nuker DPS playstyle. The most important thing here, however, is that this damage will be of charge attack type, which is a significant deviation from her base kit in terms of attack types. Honestly, I don't know if the developers are trolling here or what, but this specifically penalizes her signature set since it doesn't buff charge attack damage as opposed to other sets that will be benefiting the Constellation one completely. I hope they change it, maybe by changing the attack type to normal attack type, because it would be quite hilarious in a sad way that the more you invest on her, the weaker her intended signature set becomes, but for now that's how the situation is. Anyway, for the main DPS playstyle, the Constellation one is weaker than her signature weapon in terms of damage increase if you're upgrading from a 4-star weapon, but it becomes better if you're upgrading from a strong 5-star weapon instead, so it depends on what you have in your box. For the burst nuker playstyle, it's more clear-cut, because in this scenario the extra hits you get from the Constellation one constitute for a massive relative increase on top of the base damage, and so it becomes much more valuable. In both scenarios, however, it's worth mentioning that the Constellation one will generate more front-loaded damage for Skirk, like a mini nuke at different points in the rotation. This typically has more value than a simple raw damage boost, especially for a character like Skirk, who in her main DPS playstyle has no front load in her kit at Constellation 0. So, while the weapon can be better in terms of damage increase in some scenarios, I expect the Constellation one to be more valuable as a whole. And with this, I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. Also go check LD's shop from the link in the description below and go check the first video I made on Skirk. Bye bye.